This interview has been translated for you from Russian into English channel. Please like, subscribe and share. It helps promote the video and the channel. Thanks for your support. Thus, more people will see it and have a broader picture of what's going on in Russia in the context of global developments. Thank you for watching. Hello everyone. This is Free Russia Forum. I am Daniil Konstantinov. In 5 minutes, our today's speaker will join us. It is Garry Kasparov, our special stream with our special guest. And before he joins us, I'll make a small announcement. Free Russia Forum continues its expansion. Yesterday and the day before yesterday, we opened a branch of Free Russia Forum in Riga, Latvia. We appointed an executive board. It will be more active in Latvia. And besides that, on the 9th of November, we are planning to hold a big auction to support Russian volunteers who are fighting on the side of Ukraine against Putin's regime. This auction will raise funds to support troops of several military units, such as Siberian Battalion, Russian Volunteer Corps, Free Russia Legion, and maybe some other units. Garry is joining us. Hello, Garry. Hello. So we begin our conversation. Before that, I already made a small announcement about the upcoming auction, and I'll get back to it a bit later. But this is what I would like to ask you first. The tyrant is dead. This is the announcement that infamous political predictor, political scientists, historian, Professor Solovey, he made this announcement, and he said it yesterday, and today he spoke more about it. Then famous Telegram channel SVR General repeated this announcement, and the question is, what is behind this announcement? The phrase "tyrant is dead," if you believe history books, this is plagiarism. Allegedly, this is Lavrentiy Beria, who, the head of NKVD, said that when they entered the room where Stalin was lying down on the floor dead. Unlike SVR General, a mythical SVR General, Lavrentiy Beria actually took part in that death of Stalin. Okay, we may think that this information is total fake, but in my view, it's wrong to do that, because we need to separate real information from speculations and some ideas we may have. In reality, it's very difficult to fact-check this information. This is the reality of Russia. This is Byzantine secrecy. This is thick fog of this mystery. Whether Putin is alive or not, we can't learn that. We can't find this out. So it's like 50-50. Maybe yes, maybe not. And the same thing here, we can't really check that. But I think there are certain grounds to say that this information shouldn't be neglected. Solovey said that and whatever. No. The information the tyrant is dead is different from the information the tyrant is sick and might die tomorrow. Well, first of all, Solovey was pretty strict about it. And if we suppose that Solovey and his Telegram channel is linked to secret services, there must be a message in this announcement. And again, we can't really figure out all maneuvering in this information, but to say tyrant is dead and then repeat it again, and if Putin shows up tomorrow alive and healthy, then it means Solovey and his friends they kind of destroy their reputation, kind of, die in any virtual reality. It's not like they're playing with fire. They literally kind of sentence themselves that they're doomed in the social media. We can suppose that Putin is alive, and it's quite probable, but it's very important to note the meaning of this message, because everybody kind of looked at the first half of this message, that Putin died at 8:42 p.m. and the doctors registered his dead. But the second phrase was saying that this is a coup d'etat, because they're going to use the double. And this is very interesting, and this is very important. I'm trying to look at it logically. Let's say that Putin is alive, but then it means that somebody wants to see Putin dead. And we're living in the time when the virtual reality actually wins over the real reality. The thing is, let's say that Putin is okay, but maybe something is wrong with his health. But nevertheless, let's say, okay, Putin is fine. But in people's mind now they have doubt. Maybe Putin is not real. So there's supposed to be election. So, but is it the Tsar? Is it a double? Solovey and the people who are behind him, and I have to say there are quite serious interest behind Solovey, and they announced that Putin is not real, whether he's real or not, and this is coup d'etat. I think it's probably even harsher than Prigozhin's mutiny, because within that cloaca, within this jar of spiders, there are many different people. Some people think that the war in Ukraine went way too far, so if it's not lost, but it's impossible to win in it. And of course, Putin doesn't care about the country. But in the name of his crazy goals, Putin is sacrificing the interests of these mafia clans. And the power of these clans, they are actually burdened with Putin. That's why they announced that Putin is dead. But the fact whether he's alive or not, it's secondary, because now the game is going on in the virtual space. Because Putin is not anymore, and any of his appearances, this is a double, because Putin kind of outplayed himself with all these doubles, with his spokesman, with this Peskov guy, who constantly lies. And we have a unique situation. Within the governing clan, there is certain ambiguity, because I think the people who know what's going on, they understand that they don't know all the details. And actually having a well and healthy Putin, which I doubt actually is not going to help, because people like Solovey and those who are behind him, this announcement that it's not Putin anymore, it's a double, and it's a coup d'etat. So we're now entering a very turbulent period when within Kremlin mafia, within this criminal conglomerate, they begin quite a serious fight. And you can actually note some strange signs. Satanovsky, this anchor who left Solovyov's, this other guy, this other propaganda guy who left his program. And before, recently, they were like pouring all these lies from the screen, but now something changed. We don't know what's going on, but there are certain indicators that a real storm is coming. Actually, I would like to make an objection. You said that Solovey is risking his reputation and he puts at stake everything, but he kind of hinted that the appearance of Putin's double, or appearance of Putin, that it's not Putin, it's double, and it's coup d'etat. So, really, Solovey tomorrow, the day after tomorrow, or any other day when Putin shows up, he can keep saying that this is a double. Yes, right. But in fact, it's not the issue of Solovey, the person who is saying that this is a double, and the double acts. So what it does, it makes people doubt. because these are the people who are behind Solovey. Solovey is not in vacuum. He is not saying all this in vacuum, and he represents some interests and quite serious interests. And I think these are those groups within this criminal conglomerate who don't like what's going on in Ukraine. They don't like this friendship with Hamas. Because the relationship with Israel is worsening, and they think that Putin is a serious burden and it endangers their business, and it's hundreds of millions of billions of dollars. That's why Solovey announced that Putin is dead on their behalf. Whether he's alive or not, it's a new game, and this is a game where Solovey risks, because if Putin is alive, then Solovey could be dead, and not only virtually. And the stakes are so high because Solovey is a real figure, and this SVR general is kind of mythical one, Solovey and the group of people who are behind him. But there is real Solovey, there's real this Professor Solovey. And Prigozhin actually believed Putin's word, and Solovey might not have the same type of protection. So we don't know what's going on. It doesn't mean that Putin is alive, but it means that for some of the part of the establishment, or better to say criminal conglomerate, Putin is not this material unit anymore. He impedes their plans to live in this changing world. The world is drowning in this quagmire of wars and skirmishes, and they need to find their place in this changing world. And I think that the majority of Putin's cronies, they see their patron, they see their boss of the bosses, as a serious burden for their future. This is how they see him. You said that Solovey might not have the same type of protection as Prigozhin did, and Prigozhin is dead, and Solovey is still alive. Why do you think? Well, first of all, between Prigozhin's death and the explosion of the plane, there was certain length, a certain time, and it's just 24 hours since this sensational message that Solovey made. But no, I'm just saying all his previous announcements of Solovey, I mean, all his previous work, all his previous actions, when he was saying Putin is sick, Putin is leaving, Putin is looking for a successor, all this its information is kind of worthless, really, because you can kind of replay it. But when you say tyrant is dead, it cannot be replayed. And the words that went after that, that it's coup d'etat, that's important. This phrase, coup d'etat, actually indicates that they started this fight over the power. Whether Putin is alive or not, it doesn't matter, because now they're fighting over the power. And those who pushed Solovey to this announcement, to make this announcement, they understand all the risks that are linked to that. And I think for Putin's cronies, it's absolutely clear who is behind Solovey, and this type of message to the world that A, Putin is dead and this is a coup d'etat, because there is a double who's running the country now, so it means that the conflict within this criminal conglomerate is approaching its final phase. In other words, dead Putin continues living his life, right? Yes, somehow dead Putin is still a material factor in the Russian policy. Whether he is alive or dead, it doesn't really matter for the general concept. It's really secondary. And of course, it would be great to see a confirmation that Putin is alive. And in fact, Peskov wasn't quite confident when he was answering this question. Like, knowing Peskov, well, first of all, he kind of painfully responded to the announcement of some Telegram channel, and his today's denial was a bit kind of melancholic, so to speak. Putin is probably dead, but yesterday before his death he managed to meet with an alive person, Gregory Yavlinksy, the head of Yabloko party, and he had negotiations with him about the cease of fire in Ukraine. Why Putin would need that? And why would Yavlinsky need that? Well, first of all, do we know that the meeting was yesterday? Well, at least the press was talking about this. Well, the press spoke about it, right, and but was the meeting yesterday? So we know that the press said it yesterday, but we know that the meeting could be whenever, the day before that or a month before that. So we just need to look into details to actually learn for sure when the meeting was. Somebody kind of made this joke that Yavlinsky has been a political corpse for quite a while too. I don't know when this meeting happened, and I think it was earlier. And actually, it shows one more time that Yavlinsky is not a political corpse. He's a collaborationist who is a part of this power and a person who actually harmed the democracy in Russia significantly, and for 2 decades he always found an excuse to justify Putin's dictatorship. And his participation today in this conversation with Putin, whether it's real or it was edited or it was faked, it's not surprising. What's important that Yavlinsky continues promoting Kremlin's agenda, and those who organized this meeting, they decided to use him because he has some reputation in the West, and use him to promote this ceasefire concept in the West. Obviously, it is a war, and Ukraine is trying to free its territories, and ceasefire will give Putin time or to regroup and to re-equip or to reformat his army. And clearly this ceasefire will be freezing this conflict today, and it will be a great political victory for Putin's regime. And the thing that Yavlinsky is playing this game actually shows us on whose side he is. There is nothing surprising to me. Sadly, there are people who seriously consider Yavlinsky as a person who is ready to stand against Putin's totalitarianism, because today's anti-war slogans that Yavlinsky's supporters say, so they never mention the war, they never say how it started, they never say anything about the annexations of Ukrainian territories. Now we have more than 1,500 viewers, and I ask all our viewers to give like to our stream, and it actually helps to promote it in YouTube, so please click on like. And I'd like to go back to Valery Solovey. There are certain things that I didn't mention. You said that Solovey represents some secret services in Russia, and we can actually believe that because over these years doesn't happen to him, and actually he affords quite a bit because so many people were removed from the political landscape, and he's still there. So if we suppose that this is manipulation on the side of Solovey and the people who are behind him, and it is against Putin, because here there is no right answer for Putin in this game. So, which means what? It means that the secret services, they are doing this operation against Putin. I wouldn't use the word secret services to define this whole category, because probably there are many interests in it. And many times I said this is criminal conglomerate. And I think it's probably the best definition of this. And there are many different law enforcement groups there, and we don't know what kind of group is this, and it's actually quite a powerful group, and it decided that it can remove Putin, because this message, this announcement kind of liquidates Putin, whether he's alive or not, he's gone. So if Putin is alive, so Putin knows who these people are, those people who know nuances of these intrigues, they probably know exactly who formed this anti-Putin coalition, and they know that they can afford that, they can do that. So it's a certain form of the mutiny. I just remember what happened to Prigozhin. I think this is fight against Putin and with his course for the infinite war. And actually, the tools they use there are more sophisticated. And this move is quite unexpected. And I would say it's like a judo, if you use Putin's terms, judo move. Putin lives in this virtual reality, and they hit him in this virtual reality. And they say, so you don't exist in this reality, and if you appear, it's a double. So maybe we just need to get champagne and popcorn and keep watching what's going to be happening. So if it's media manipulation, and we kind of need to use this language because we don't know what happened, they used quite an ancient Russian image that could be put into words like this, a famous phrase from the movie: the Tsar is not real. This meme, the message that is very well perceived in Russia. Just let's recall the time of trouble, false Dmitry I, false Dmitry II, Pugachev mutiny, and similar things. It's a very old and very Russian thing. Yes, imposter. An imposter is a very important factor of the Russian history. And right now, it's a real time of trouble. We already had one false Dmitry, right? Dmitry Medvedev. He was sitting in the throne. And right now, they are playing this game again. I think that to take it so skeptically as many online commentators did, and actually in the West they were quite skeptical about this announcement. Some people wrote something about something, whatever, but I think in fact it's a very interesting development, and you can't just neglect it just like that. Even if we imagine that tomorrow Putin shows up and meets with Kadyrov, the head of Chechnya, or Shoigu, Minister of Defense, again, this rumor is being spread, and the Tsar is not real, it's a double. And it's very hard to fight it, to fight against that in the time of internet. You know, people will take it like this, it's a double, so it's a double and that's it. And what can you do with it? And that Putin is somewhere stored in the freezer, in a coffin. It's kind of funny and it's sad at the same time. We're talking about events that have historical meaning, not only for our country, but for the whole world. And we have to deal with this kind of Russian fairy tales, in a sense, right? With these categories. We're living in the reality that we are put in by the Putin's regime. And it's just impossible to imagine. It's impossible to imagine that in a big civilized country, anything like that can be happening. But in Russia, it can. Yes, naturally. And by the way, a few months before Prigozhin's mutiny, not so many people could believe that. And if I told anybody 2 years before, I told them that Putin's chef would have an army and take it to Moscow, people would show me that I'm crazy. But you see, over the last few years, there are so many events, and if you begin to count them, there will be the most phantasmagorical events, because there is no any mad fantasy, say like Kafka or some Orwell's predictions. They would never be able to imagine anything like that. Each of these events is crazy. And you will be astonished just looking at them. Just imagine this. In Ukraine, they have election, and they elect a Jew Ukrainian president. Russia begins a full-scale war against Ukraine. The president of Ukraine turns to the West, and the West is shipping their tanks, and German tanks are now in Kharkiv. So this is 2023. American missiles are used there too. Ukraine is attacking the Black Sea fleet of Russia with American missiles. It's crazy. And so if you take them kind of separately, and the person from 2013 will be astonished if they are told what's going on in 2023. And we are living in this reality. And each event that happens, not only in Russia or Ukraine, but across the world, would astonish people from the previous time, but today we're kind of used to it, and we live in the world where anything is possible. Yes, right, all these events that you listed remind me some chapters from a dystopian novel, some crazy dystopian novel, and I couldn't even believe that. So you mentioned Kadyrov, the head of Chechnya. Actually, very strange things happened to Kadyrov as well. So he is sick, then people say he is dead, and he doesn't look well, and healthy people don't look like this. And beside that, there is kind of a separate game with his son. They're like playing this card of his son, who becomes a political figure. There was this violent beating of this pal in Chechnya, and Kadyrov's son beat him up, and then a parliamentary deputy condemned that, and then he was reprimanded for that, and then Kadyrov's son was given different awards, different decorations for what he did. So what do you think is going on? Something is wrong with Kadyrov, and they are trying to find his successor? Well, here I think we can be quite confident. I'm not a doctor to make a diagnosis, but you put it right. So they're playing the card of Kadyrov's son, which means that they need a replacement for Kadyrov, and it may happen clearly. There are some other forces behind his son, but knowing the traditions in Chechnya and in that region of Caucasus, we can see that they're trying to make an attempt to keep this succession, this inheritance. They kind of show his son everywhere. They give him all these awards, these decorations and stuff. So it means only one thing, that things are not going so well for Kadyrov, and we don't know how long he'll last. And it's quite possible that his death is quite possible. So that's why they're so quickly playing this card of his son. And it's very important to see it's not happening gradually. It happens very quickly. We see, like, within a couple of months, we have this incredible PR campaign for his son. And I think it is an attempt to keep control over Chechnya if something irreversible happens to Kadyrov, from their point of view. And actually, if one tyrant lasts, the world will feel much better. But everybody understands that all tyrant construct, they're strictly linked to the tyrant, and they're like a spine of the structure. And when the spine is removed, it collapses. So, and the easiest way to kind of keep the spine, this is the succession, the inheritance. And of course, when Kadyrov has that and Putin doesn't, and when we read history books, and Kremlin's power in the UK was quite strong in 1658, but his son, after his death, couldn't stay in power more than 2 years, and the restoration began. And I think right now the processes are going on much faster. And I can't imagine that Adam Kadyrov, even supported by Kadyrov's cronies, I can't imagine that he will be able to keep the power if things will go wild. Actually, quite interesting that Kadyrov, in the days of Prigozhin's mutiny, he wasn't in a rush to support Putin, and he said that he was flying from one place to another. That's why he didn't make any announcement. And actually, his troops kind of got stuck in a traffic jam and could not confront the Wagner troops. And then there was his sudden sickness, and then maybe sudden death, and then this whole thing kind of looks different now, right? Well, again, it's very difficult to say, because he actually didn't look well before Prigozhin's mutiny. It didn't happen immediately. He was kind of healthy and rosy, and then all of a sudden he looked sick. He had problems. But again, all these rumors about him being poisoned slowly, and again, it's rumors, we don't know. Is it real? Can be. Kadyrov has many enemies among the people in Chechnya and among the law enforcement agencies. So that's why it's quite possible to assume, statistically speaking, that we see that they're trying to get rid of him. And maybe it's not directly connected with the mutiny. I think Prigozhin's mutiny shocked Prigozhin because he was Prigozhin's ally at the first stage of invasion of Ukraine. And I think that Kadyrov is trying to be pragmatic. The situation is beginning to swing. And what Kadyrov knows, we don't know, and we know that his awareness is much higher than ours because he knows what's going on in this criminal conglomerate. But what's obvious, and you don't have to be like a great strategist to understand, so what's going to happen if chaos happens, and the presence of physical force and military force is very important for Kadyrov. And for Kadyrov to waste his military resource to confront Wagner Group, why? In the name of what? He knows if they'll stop Wagner, they'll stop him without Kadyrov. And if they can't stop Wagner, so his battalion Akhmat will not do much. So that's why he said there was a traffic jam and there were problems with transportation, maybe he had a lack of fuel or whatever. Something happened, that's why his troops didn't confront the Wagner Group. And he didn't think that what skirmish was his skirmish, it was his fight. While he's behind Putin, it helps Kadyrov to strengthen his power. He made some moves in Ukraine, he sent Chechen troops to Ukraine, and I think they had significant losses there. And I think that this military resource that is important for him to keep his power in Chechnya or to hand it over to his son if something bad happens, it happens to everyone, and I hope that it will happen to him sooner than later. So he doesn't want to waste this resource for such reckless moves. Interestingly enough, I recall the life of his father, Ahmad Kadyrov, who kind of conveniently got killed, allegedly, in the explosion that was set by terrorists, and the power was given to the boy in the sweatsuit, to Ramzan Kadyrov. And now we witness a remake. So another boy, but not in a sweatsuit. He has a different uniform, kind of dynasty one. And he's going to be put on the throne. No, I think it's just an external resemblance. But even this kind of stumbles. All parallels kind of end here. Kadyrov had a different background, Ramzan Kadyrov. He went through the war. He has a different life experience. His character was built in real fights in the war. I don't know if it's real or not, that when he was boasting, and he said that he killed the first Russian when he was 15. He has a different background. And this boy, Adam, is more like a spoiled boy, and all he can do, he can kick an armless person. But there is some sort of parallel here. Ramzan's father died in an explosion, and he's dying too, probably. Well, it could be good, yes, but what means a lot, this is the background of the person experience, a character. Ramzan Kadyrov, he had quite serious traits of a dictator, a real cannibal, to get the power. But his son kind of grew up in the greenhouse, and in the pack of wolves, you have to be the strongest one. And if they just appointed you, so later they will tear you apart when they realize that the older one left and you have nothing but his name. Besides, there are many in Chechnya who want this power, and and there is still blood vengeance in that region. Another interesting news from Chechnya, they established a new military unit, and actually noticed that because of the name of this battalion named after Sheikh Mansour. And Sheikh Mansour, this is one of the leaders of Chechen resistance during the Russia Empire. He was fighting with the Russian Empire in 18th century. He's a hero of the Chechen people, and it caught my eye because it's quite a symbol and quite challenge thrown to Moscow. So next time they'll have a regiment named after Imam Shamil, the hero of 19th century, and then next one can be named after Johar Dudayev, the first president of Chechnya. So what do you think? Is it a challenge? They're trying to distance themselves from Moscow? Yes, of course. It's not even a challenge. It's an insurance. Because it's not obvious that everything will be going according to Putin's scenario. Actually, it's obvious it's not going to go according to Putin's scenario. And in this scenario, disintegration of Russia is not theoretical anymore. And clearly that weakening of the central power and its inability to support Kadyrov with funds and resources will force Kadyrov and his cronies, who are going to put everything on his son, to try to stay in power. And it's not only blood vengeance. There are many people in Chechnya who consider Kadyrov's clan a traitor. And it's quite possible that Kadyrov's son will have no way out but to follow advice of his friends. As you said, they may have a battalion of Johar Dudayev, the general who was the first president of Chechnya, and somewhere in his chest there is this green flag of Chechnya. So almost 3,000 people are watching us, so please like our video. Many people watch it, but not everybody gives their likes to the video, so please, it helps to promote it. So I would like to discuss a few things about Gregory Yavlinksy. Can return to this topic. When he met Putin, alive or not, with some Putin. He met with some Putin. There's a point of view, and it was expressed in the media, that Yavlinsky is given a permission to participate in the presidential race in 2024. Do you think it looks like that? I think it's quite possible, and I wouldn't exclude this possibility, because the regime is losing its legitimacy, and Yavlinsky is like this politician who works on an on-call basis. He always did his best like a young pioneer. And that's why his appearance there does not surprise me. Though there is still, sadly, there is still this image of a liberal politician, and he may play some role in blurring the picture for the West. Because right now the Parliamentary Assembly of Europe is announcing Putin illegitimate ruler, and it seems that this process is gaining a momentum. And in the search of legitimacy, Yavlinsky may play a role. But you know what? They can do whatever they want. Because Yavlinsky, he doesn't exist as a politician. He's like a political corpse. And I think all these attempts to find a new variant, a new option. There was Prokhorov, this businessman guy, then Sobchak, this journalist who ran for a president. I think all of them, they're just an attempt to hack the system with their own tool. So anti-war campaign is impossible in Russia. So is it possible to start a campaign to stop the war? I just want to see how Yavlinsky will be talking about the war, because the word war is prohibited in Russia. And I have no doubt that he'll find a way to kind of wrap it up in a proper form. But even in this case, it will be quite a tongue twister to say. It's like you want to stop the war, but there is no war. It's like an anti-special military operation. Sounds kind of weird. But I think it's going to be Yavlinsky's issues. And frankly, I don't care about it, because I think the regime is illegitimate and criminal, and I don't have any business with it. And so in their holidays, election and stuff, I don't care. If there will be a flash mob, and of course it's always good to use kind of the given political landscape to spoil the celebration for the enemy, but to participate in this procedure that for some reason people still call it election, I think it's kind of irritates me. You kind of preempted my next question about the strategy of opposition for the next year. In Berlin, they had a big meeting of the opposition, and they discussed this issue of presidential election in 2024. And you don't want to talk about it, as I understand. Well, we can talk about it. And I think that they made a pretty reasonable decision not to fight over it, to say no to Putin. And it's very important that they put it in the declaration that their commitment to Ukraine's victory, and all the important statements of the first Berlin Declaration were repeated in it, and the confirmation of all these statements made it impossible to participate in any political life in Putin's Russia, because this phrase itself, commitment to victory of Ukraine, is already criminal according to the Russian current laws that are passed by so-called parliament in Putin's Russia. I think that everybody has to make their own decision, and I think that any participation in the presidential campaign, that because it is legitimization of Putin's regime, because this is their event and this is what they do, and actually this is a breach of our Berlin Declaration. If you want to participate in the election, and if it's illegitimate, then it's illegitimate and don't take part in it. So, but to participate in a flash mob and do some things against the election, that's great. And I'm sure that the number they'll put in the final ballot, everybody knows what it will be, and you can't impact it. And Berlin, actually, opposition conference happened before this historical announcement of Valery Solovey. But now we are saying that sort of nothing extraordinary happened. But frankly, we still have to keep in mind that actually something happened, and because people will be thinking about the Putin's double, and they will be talking about it. Putin himself might not know where is real him. And I think now we need to focus on a different thing. We need to help Ukraine. We need to support Ukraine in this war. There are many issues in the West. And sadly, the situation is not as it should be. It's quite ambiguous now. We have the war in the South, in the Middle East. And it's very important not to have this feeling that the Israeli situation kind of overshadows what's happening in Ukraine. What's important to understand is that this is the same war, that this line to confront these dictatorships goes from Dnieper River to Jordan River. And this is my next question. The 7th of October, you said that it was a well-planned war, and Putin is behind it. And because Putin's Russia is always looking for an opportunity to provoke the world, Putin, Iran, and Hamas, they should be in the same line. Do you think that this attack in Israel was initiated by Putin? Well, yes, absolutely. There is no doubt about it, because it is beneficial for him, because the situation in Ukraine was worsening, and Putin wanted to distract resources of the West from it, and he wanted to psychologically create such a situation when, for many Western politicians, there will be a different topic which is more important than Ukraine. So what can we say about his direct participation? It's hard to say anything. Well, first of all, what we know about the 7th of October, it was a surprise for Israelis, which is itself is a surprise, because Israeli intelligence didn't notice it, and Americans didn't know it either. So first of all, what we know is it was well-planned operation and with use of high tech, and Israel had 2 lines of defense in the borderline with Gaza, with a lot of technology, with cameras and remotely controlled weapons and stuff. It wasn't an elementary attack. And then people were trained to fly hang gliders. It was very interesting that Hamas was continuing its training right in front of Israeli cameras, and they were doing something, which means they were dulling Israelis' vigilance. The question is where they had real trainings. They were in a different place, and in a place where even Americans couldn't detect them. So that's why we may assume that some very well seasoned people were involved in these trainings in terms of espionage and intelligence, and knowing where they can have such trainings without the risk to be detected by the Americans. Besides, as I understand, they used quite advanced drone technologies to break through the defense line. And the question is, what 2 countries are actively working in this area? This is Russia and Iran. And according to the intelligence from the Ukrainian side, they regularly see new modifications of drones. And clearly that there could have been new drones as part of those programs to break through the borderline of Israel, and outrageous atrocities of this attack. Another factor, it's kind of further dehumanization of people, and they kill and kill, but these atrocities, they don't leave any way out for Israel just to start a land operation in Gaza. And in the north they have Hezbollah, which is a stronger military force with thousands of missiles. It's a real army that is seasoned in Syria war, and can be quite challenging, and it's closer to Tel Aviv. So Israel is in great danger, which means Americans will have to take part in it, and this is where it starts. And obviously there are interests of Putin, and they're quite obvious. Besides, they also detected hacker attacks on Israeli infrastructure, and they detected some Russian trace in it. So that's why, with a high degree of probability, we may say that if Russia didn't initiate it, it was quite active in it back in Iran. And all those rallies across the world supporting Hamas, they also rose not out of nowhere. And all those events, they require serious preparation, as we know. And look at the Palestinian rallies. So those flags, so they're industrially made. All those banners, also, when I look at them, they're also manufactured industrially. The same memes, the loudspeakers, it's money, it's organization, it's a network. And obviously all this was prepared in advance. 2 days ago, simultaneously in a number of big American colleges, at the same time they had mass pro-Palestinian demonstrations. And there is this document, it's multi-page document, where it's described how to, it's It's like a guide how to prepare such rallies, what to do, how to do, where to go, and all that. And clearly it was prepared before, and it had to be distributed. It was preparing the activities of the 18th of October. The 7th of October, it was tragedy for Israelis and Americans, but not for those who responded immediately. Usually, it takes quite a while for Putin to gain a momentum, and Russia was trying to be neutral and show the face of a peacemaker, but Russia's response was very quick. Russian propaganda immediately supported Palestine, and Putin, I think he made the statement in 48 hours. And I think what happened on the 7th of October, it was a part of a well-developed plan to distract the West from Ukraine, to begin a global conflict, that there will be great losses, and who would care about the civilians of Gaza Strip and the West Bank and Syria? That's why, without the direct participation and the ideological support of Putin's people, I think they did take part in it. And actually, the 7th of October, this is Putin's birthday, and not so many people actually noted it, and I did. It seems like a trifle, but yet so many times on that day, some bad events happened. On the 7th of October, Anna Politkovskaya, Russian journalist, was assassinated. And when you look at this chain of events, it seems that it's not just incidental. And the question is, do you think that they make this kind of ritual assassination, ritual crimes like that? So why? Do you think it's some madness in it? Well, you know, dictators, they are quite superstitious. And on the one hand, you may think it's a coincidence, but on the other hand, yes, there are coincidences, but there are way too many coincidences. You're trying to find a connection. And I think that all the arrows, they point in the same direction. Hamas in Moscow, they have negotiations in Moscow. So how to understand that? So they're instructing them or they're thanking them? So what do you think? So what are they doing there? Well, of course, they're instructing them. They're instructing Hamas. I think there is a certain failure in their plans. Israel is postponing the land operation, and I think they're in consultations with the Americans because they understand the consequences. There will be very severe fights there. Israel didn't start the land operation there yet, but now they make these myths about thousands of people killed. And I'm not even going to comment on the fact that the Western press is taking the word of Hamas and believe in it. We understand it's a propaganda campaign, and they were hoping that Israel will begin the land operation right away. But it didn't happen like this, so the things are not going according to the plan, and Hamas needs consultations what to do next. So they went to Moscow. So while they were teasing Americans, they launched several strikes on American military bases. There were 19 injured, and one person died of a heart attack. Americans didn't respond, but last night they bombed 2 sites in Syria and 2 Iranian sites. And I think it's just a beginning. And the United States brought 2 U.S. carrier groups to Israeli shores. One carrier group can level Iran with all its infrastructure for a few hours, and now we have 2 carrier groups there, which means Americans are seriously considering a total war in the Middle East. So that's why Hamas needs consultations. They need to figure out what to do next. Because I have no doubt that there were some calls from Washington. So you can tease America as long as you want, but if Americans decide that it's time to act, things will be turned to dust. And actually, Wagner's group tried to cross some river somewhere, and 200 troops kind of vaporized within an hour. If you make an analogy with ancient Greek time, so they just use light infantry. Right now, there are 2 carrier groups, and I think that from the point of view of the Kremlin and Tehran, Now they need to make a decision how far they want to go with it, because there is quite a high probability that in case of attack of Israel, Americans may get involved, and the whole thing will end up quite quickly. So do you think the whole thing is going to blow up? I think in some way it will, because I think with so much explosives and gasoline on the floor and matches in hands of so many jerks, something may blow up. I think now we're paying for many years reluctance of Americans to use force when the force could stop dictators, their ambitions. But right now, in some way or another, something will happen. And we have no doubt Israel will start the land operation, and the developments will be quite different. So the question is, yes, it will blow up. The scale of this fire, we'll see. It depends on American decisiveness to use real force to cool off all those hotheads. But then there is another question about Ukraine. Why two carrier groups didn't show up in the Black Sea on the 24th of February of the last year? Well, that's a killer question, because the issue of Ukraine wasn't on the first place for the United States, and this issue may require not just one stream but many long talks. It's all about the failure of American foreign policy and lack of strategy since 1991 after the Cold War. But what's obvious that American foreign policy, at least starting with Obama, Trump, and the beginning of Biden's administration, of course, it had different priorities. And the conflict with Russia was not among those priorities. And right now, America is trying to avoid a direct confrontation with Russia. But what's obvious that Biden's administration was trying to find any way to minimize all those risks of possible confrontation. So that's why the carrier groups didn't show up, and actually Russian jet fighters many times provoked Americans for some aggressive response. Actually, the Chinese do it even more. So far, America keeps its cool, and yesterday's strikes on two sides of Iran, it's quite serious action that kind of shows that America is ready for something. But again, it's pretty limited for two carrier groups bombing two sides. That's just a warm-up with a lightweight. Yes, thank you very much, Gary. Our time is up, and thank you for joining us and being with us for so long. And again, I would like to remind you that Garry Kasparov was with us, and please give your likes to our stream in YouTube. It helps to promote it. And let me remind you that on the 9th of November there will be an auction to support Russian volunteers who are fighting on the side of Ukraine. It will be under the auspices of the Free Russia Forum. And with this, we finish our stream. We say goodbye to our speaker. Thank you very much for being with us. Thank you. See you next time.